Oh, good afternoon, everyone. We're live, Amit, on our
Yeah,
LinkedIn Live
should be fun.
here.
Should be fun. Yeah,
Yeah, welcome, everyone. So happy that you're able to join us. My name is Jim Tantaro, CEO of ScaleWith. We're a customer intelligence platform that embeds social impact into marketing, sales, renewals, and procurement, B2B transactions. And I'm really excited about this session that we're going to do here. The topic is value realization from your technology investments. And as we all know, Amit and I were talking even before we just went live,
hmm
there's a lot of macroeconomic headwinds. We see it every day. You're reading it in all the publications in the Wall Street of longer selling cycles, companies that are taking more time to understand the true value of their investments in technology. So this is going to be a great 30 minutes. And I'm joined here with Amit Duvedi, who's the co-founder of Growth Accelerators and one of our most important strategic partners as we go to market together. But Amit, why don't you introduce yourself?
sure,
I
Jim.
do you
Yeah,
justice in
yeah, no,
your
no, that's good. That's good. Yeah. So, hey, everyone, nice to be here. Real quick background. So, I have been doing. I call this as quantifying the business impact of technology, right? ROI, kind of that broader topic. I've been doing that for about 18 plus years. So, 7 years at SAP, 5 years at Coupa, couple of other startups, and then for the last 5 years as a co-founder of Growth Accelerators, where we serve startups, high growth companies, express the business value of their technology. And in a nutshell, Jim, if you were to characterize people like me,
yeah
like we are these like skeptical, no nonsense people
yeah
who like follow the money trail everywhere, and eventually it's like, hey, did the revenue increase? Did the cost
yeah
go down?
yeah
So gotta keep it real. So
yeah. I love it, Amit. I love some of the work that we've done together, but we'll get into this throughout this conversation. Thanks for joining us today. It's really exciting to have you. And let's just, we started with this. You and I were talking about this yesterday,
yeah.
which is there's all these macroeconomic headwinds. Everybody's looking at their technology stack to say,
Mhm.
why, is there opportunities for consolidation? And most importantly, people are all trying to understand what their AI strategy is. It's like there's all this innovation and transformation and uncertainty that's happening as we speak today. But from your perspective, why is return on investment and the business value realization, why is it so important? And have you seen it become more important today versus the career that you've had in the technology space?
I think it's always been important, probably more so now though. And I'll give you like a very quick perspective, both from the
Uh-huh.
side of the enterprise buyer, right? Like, and also the enterprise seller, the solution provider. So from a buyer perspective, there's always limited budget, Jim, right, for technology investments, right? I mean, it's nobody has infinite budgets, and I would say today, a lot of funds getting diverted to AI initiatives as companies are kind of trying to figure out what does that really look like.
Hmm.
And granted, I'm sure there are solutions that call themselves AI solutions now, just because that's the way, right? So there's a lot of stuff happening. But bottom line is limited budget. You got different departments saying, I want this, I want that. As a
Right.
CFO or as an executive, how are you going to decide where to put the money, right? How
Yeah.
are you going to know if it worked or not? If you don't kind of do an ROI assessment, it's really hard. And then
Yeah.
from a seller perspective, right? Infinite sales cycles, demos and POCs, lots
Mm.
of tire kicking. And Jim, I mean, you're a sales guy too,
Yeah.
right? Like, what's the biggest competition? It's not a competitor, it's do nothing, right?
Yes.
Always been, even more so now. So,
Yeah.
if you can't link what you do to your prospects' goals and express the business impact of your technology, I think
Yeah.
there's a very slim chance of closing deals, right? So,
Oh,
I,
agreed.
it's massively important for both sides.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. There's always the discipline of or methodologies and everything. We were
Hmm
just on a call the other day with a large CPG manufacturer, and they
hmm
talked about the methodology of sourcing and procurement. And so I was like, I didn't know that there is a methodology of this, but I know deeply that there's a process to this. So what is like your best practices or the way that you approach
Yep.
this discipline of business value?
Yeah, I think it's kind of like a what and a how, right? In terms of the what, I would say A few things. One is, so let's say from a seller perspective, you're
Yeah.
selling your solution to B2B sales cycle, right? If you don't map what you're selling and your capabilities to the strategic goals of the company, I think it's a long game. Because if you're an executive with the other side, you already identified what's important to you. And if there's someone requesting money and it doesn't tie to something that you care about, you generally are not going to take a brand new initiative, right? So that's one thing. I think also clear articulation. I call it the heaven and hell, right?
Yeah.
It's an old term, from my SAP days.
Yeah.
If you can't express in a language that an executive can understand that, A, look at this hell, current state,
Yeah.
something is broken, something needs work, and B, how it's going to get better, the future state, in a language that they understand, right? So I think that's important. And then finally, you got to express in a very credible fashion, like what's the ROI, what's the business impact, revenue
Yeah.
increase, cost reduce, inventory go down, blah blah blah, right?
Yeah.
um, and real quick, in terms of the process of the methodology, right? I think the number one thing is you got to have a champion on the other side. It's always better that way. In fact, the best business case or an ROI exercise is one that your prospect is kind of doing on their own, and you as a soft solution provider is helping them with that, but it's kind of their business case.
Yeah.
So that collaborative approach, having numbers that are very credible, very solid, with a lot of back and forth and validation, I think that's important.
Yeah.
um, and finally, Jim, I've always valued this whole thing of doing business process discovery, not only a technology discovery,
Yeah.
and asking like, so what, at least three times. Right?
Hmm.
It's like, oh, we've got a solution that can help you process more data. Okay, so what?
Yeah.
Well, you can get visibility into how our products are doing in the field. Okay, so what? Well, we can identify some problems proactively. Well, so what?
Yeah.
Well, because of that, we can reduce product returns within warranty. And
Yeah.
bingo, now you
Yeah.
have a business metric or a
Yeah.
business initiative, right? As opposed to it started with like, hey, I've got a data problem, right?
Yeah.
So I think that translation is really important.
I like what you said about so co-creation is
Yes.
as I'm a design thinker by trade and by
Mhm.
education and experience, and I always think about co-creation. So the sponsor you said about that, which I love, and I want everybody that's on this call is that they own the business case, not you or me. It's when a customer is engaging in an evaluation of, say, ScaleWith or any platform,
Mhm.
you must have them, they have to own it because it's their living document. And no one buys into it when you just put an ROI on their lap and say, here you go, you're going to get this return, right? So I love that point. But let me double click into something you just said,
Mhm.
which is the process side. I always think of everything we do through a customer journey lens,
Mhm.
all those moments of engagement, which are processes. And
Mhm.
within those are people, process, technology, and what's the risk of not doing anything. What's the ROI or risk of not doing anything? Is that important to look at it through those, like, the segments of the journey
Mhm.
instead of just one big audacious business case, Amit?
Oh, so I always say, Jim, this whole ROI business case, this whole thing, it's an art and science. And the
Yeah.
science is actually the easier part, right? I'm not saying it's easy, just make up numbers. It takes time to, do a business case with credible numbers. Don't get me wrong. But the art side is even more important. The art side is what? It's empathy, right? It's
Mhm.
so to me, you got to know who the main stakeholders are for the solution you're trying to sell. And most sellers know that, but like really understand your different stakeholders. And the classic WIFM, right? What's in it for me for
Yeah.
different stakeholders? You got to be able to express that. And I think from a product design, implementation, customer success perspective, making users at each part of the customer journey that you alluded to incredibly successful before you scale. So strongly in the camp of start small,
Yeah.
perfect it, get people super excited that they can't live without the solution, very clearly defined use case.
Yeah.
Maybe within a department initially, and then
Yeah.
kind of build out from that, as opposed to this big bang, release it out and hope they use it.
Yeah.
Yep,
When
definitely.
we would do the some of the innovation work in some prior organizations I've been in, we always had that ROI in that moment of engagement,
Right.
and then you could so that you could deconstruct it. So,
That's
for example, at ScaleWith, if we're working with a marketing organization embedding social impact in the way they market and drive outbound and
Mhm.
campaigns, we like to kind of use that as like each of those moments of engagement in that functional area. How is that customer driving ROI that's accelerating in those different sub elements of
Yeah.
their process,
Jim,
which are
it's like this. Sorry to interrupt, but
yeah,
just
yeah.
crossed my mind. It's like this, right? All of that ROI is theoretical if there's no adoption. There's no
Oh, of
impact in
course.
adoption, right? Because you can have a solution with the great potential for value, all documented, great business case, all of that.
Uh-huh.
But if only 10% of your intended audience is using it, you're getting only 10% of the intended value, right? Which is a failure, right?
Yeah.
So, like, that's the real thing. Honest, I mean, the ROI is a necessary thing. It's not sufficient. You got to
Oh,
have the whole engagement piece. Absolutely.
yeah. So let's do this. Let's transition to the work that we've been doing. So we set the table, and great thoughts there, Amit. Now, scale with
Mm-hmm.
just I've been here as our CEO for over the last gosh, I joined here about 8-9 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
It is such an interesting dynamic of our business model. And anybody that goes to our website or has talked to me or talked to anybody from our organization, it's something that I think we're blazing trails in the way that we look at B2B transactions across marketing, sales, renewals, and procurement, and embedding that as a differentiator, a better way to market, a better way to sell, an easier way to reduce churn, and to really create that net revenue retention uplift. So what, and all that, when I tell people that, they say they always want to know more, but what got you interested in our business model and our AI platform and our data platform? What got you excited, and what do
Yep.
you see the value for scale with?
Yeah, it's interesting, Jim. I think when we first engaged, I got to admit this. My first thought was like, gosh, like building an ROI, a credible, anyone can build an ROI, it's
Yeah.
kind of credible. Building a credible ROI for like social impact spending. I mean, give me a supply chain, space any day where it's like, I'm going to reduce your inventory. It's like really hard, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I was a bit like, ugh, I don't know about this, right?
Yeah.
But then as I dug deeper, I realized a couple of things. I mean, I'll use plain, simple English language, right?
Yeah.
Like, the way I look at it is what ScaleWith does, right? Among other things. But let's
Mhm.
say for the ScaleWith solutions that are focused on enterprise sellers, what you guys do is you equip salespeople with an additional incentive, and you kind of make it programmatic so that they don't have to do something out of their natural workflow,
Mhm.
but you are giving them another incentive that they can offer to their prospect or customers, and
Mhm.
that is making social impact contributions on behalf of
Mhm.
those prospects or customers to an organization of their choice, right?
Yeah.
And ScaleWith is kind of orchestrating and facilitating this whole thing.
Yeah.
So, and then there's an AI component of it, and not
Mhm.
AI washing, call something that wasn't AI. There's a genuine AI component to it, right? There's an efficiency play, there's that kind of thing. And to me, then suddenly the light went on, like, gosh, this is a novel way. It's To me, it's a novel sales and marketing lever, right? I
Yeah.
mean, there's many different levers to increase pipeline, increase conversion,
Yeah.
close more deals, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
This is a novel way. I think it's something that resonates at a human level, right?
Yeah.
um, Rather than like presentation slide, it's like, people care, people want to make an impact in the world, companies want to make an impact in
Yeah.
the world, and you're sort of making it easy for sellers and buyers to co-invest in some
Yeah.
causes. In return, the sellers are hopefully getting a competitive advantage that maybe the other vendors in the space are not offering, right?
Yeah.
So I like that novelty of it, and I think actually it's more credible than the cliched, oh, we're going to give you more sales pipeline visibility, blah blah blah. I mean, there's tons of solutions that have been tried in this space, right?
Yes.
And there's many sales and marketing activities and events where the ROI is not there. It hasn't produced the desired impact. So I think this is a novel way to
Yeah.
redirect funds from some of those low impact areas into this.
Yeah.
And it's very binary. Like, either it works or not, and you're gonna know it. Like,
Yeah.
go offer an incentive to your prospect, and that helps you close the deal, or it doesn't. So
Yeah.
I love that simplicity of it.
Yeah.
And I think finally, I mean, it's got that social impact angle, right? I mean, no matter how you cut it, this also ends up with more money being diverted by corporations to needy social impact organizations.
Yeah.
So society wins. I mean, I love that always, right? So I think it's interesting, it's forward looking, and it's very yeah, I love it.
Yeah, I love what you said that at the end too. It's like, so you can look at the business aspect, which we all, of
Hmm.
course, we're there to help marketers market in differentiating ways to drive up, customer acquisition. We're helping salespeople have a differentiator, right? Connect with their customers in entirely new ways.
Hmm.
Renewal and customer success teams to be able to secure that, that important renewal with attrition reduction or churn reduction.
Hmm.
And so, that when we talk about that, everybody's like, "Oh, great!" But normally, in an organization, you would do it all manual. What we're talking about, which is embedding that social impact, having those conversations. So we just automate the whole thing, which I think that's a key ROI element of this, which is
Hmm.
no one has to get hands on. Everything is automated through our 360-degree view of the customer that we provide, through the automation of the action that's embedded in transactions or marketing campaigns, and then moving the funds to those precious dollars to those social impact organizations to execute and put our money where our mouth is, right? That, for our
Totally.
customers.
And I
So
think that's a necessary thing, Jim. I think what you mentioned, right, which is about making it really easy and seamless and automated for them.
yeah,
Because I think any users, they're naturally reluctant to doing something that's out of the norm for them. But
mhm.
especially I've worked with salespeople my whole career, a lot of my career, and among all the users, if you will, of solutions, salespeople, they are the biggest BS smellers, if you will, right? Like they can, like, hey, if this is like not helping me, I am not going to use it. Like no
Exactly.
chance in hell.
No one has time, Amit, right?
Nobody has time. They've got to meet prospects, meet customers,
Yeah,
be on the road, all those
yeah,
things. So I would say that's a necessary condition, right? You
yeah,
got to make it so seamless for them that,
yeah,
and then it's a value add because they're like, hey, I have yet another tool in my bag to
yeah,
help close that deal, right?
yeah.
So
I agree. Let me ask you this: we work together. There's a question coming in, but I want to get to that. Here's the question: what are the early signs that technology isn't delivering its intended ROI? We'll take a question. So, yeah, like, is there like a signals or patterns or insights that you see when the tech it's just not delivering the
yeah,
ROI? Yep.
I think I mean ROI is a very broad word. It matters how it's done. So there are many instances where you know it's not if it's not done in a rigorous way, in a credible way, you could have outlandish ROI claims, and
Yeah.
then there's just no chance in hell to meet those expectations because they were very unrealistic just
Yeah.
to kind of close the deal, right?
Yeah.
That's not really true ROI. I think user adoption definitely is one of them. Like I
I
said
agree.
before, ROI, having a business case, I think it's absolutely necessary, but it's not sufficient.
Yeah.
So starting with product design, but services, CSM, everything, everyone has a role, but like making sure that there's high adoption, right? Without adoption, there's nothing. And I think, Jim, the other thing is I see sometimes people sell sort of single threaded, they sell into a department and they get that deal. But if the solution success is dependent on different departments using the solution, then not identifying the right audience and educating them and involving them in the sales process,
Yep.
yeah, I've seen that as a detriment as well.
I have another one. So this is such a great question because there's a lot of skepticism with when someone says, "Here's your ROI." It's
Mhm.
conservative. We base it on 1% of what we think is going to be the total ROI. We've been around a long time, but I would always say when I see it fail is around data. When
Mhm.
people don't commit to the normalization, standardization, and governance of the bidirectional flows of the data within technology platforms, the ROI goes out the window.
Mhm.
Really, because how many times you were at SAP? I spent a long time at Salesforce and in technology. Is
Mhm.
that you would show up to a meeting and it's at post sales. You
Mhm.
deliver the business case and people said, I thought I was going to I thought I'd see this type of savings. I thought I'd see this type of productivity.
Right.
And right away, people aren't using, so the adoption, but then the information, the insights is way off. So people
Right.
have no trust or confidence in that.
Right.
So whoever
Yeah.
asked that question is a really great question that
Yep.
everybody needs to be aware of.
Mhm.
And please, if for people in the audience, we love the questions. This makes it fun.
Hey,
But
Jim, if I could just add one more comment
yeah,
to that,
go
right?
ahead.
You
Yeah,
mentioned,
go for it.
what you said triggered a thought. You said, so I already cautioned, like I mentioned before, one of the things is an outlandish ROI, an unrealistic ROI, right? I want to caution against the other extreme as well. And I do encounter this a lot in my day-to-day working. So everyone wants to be conservative, right? Especially on the buying side, because let's face it, chances are good if it's a well-run company, they're going to be on the hook to deliver those promised savings, right? So it's in everyone's interest to make it realistic and perhaps conservative.
Yeah,
Sometimes there's a danger in going too cautious and too conservative because,
yeah,
like I mentioned at the beginning of the call, there's finite budget dollars.
yeah.
And if out of safety and out of risk aversion,
Mhm.
I'm not advocating being unrealistic, but if it's too conservative and too diluted, guess what? Some other department is going to walk away with that funding,
Yeah.
and your initiative is not even going to get funded. So just want to throw that out there too. I think it's a fine balance on that front.
Yeah. Can I throw a little soft, like maybe a softball question out here? Our AI, we live it because our platform is an AI first platform,
Hmm.
and our chief product officer and our engineering team and technology team have done an amazing job. We have LLMs that are surfacing proprietary data, and we're helping people through the automation of the B2B transactions with social impact. It's a really interesting platform that I've gotten really passionate about since I've joined. But are people embracing when you hear all these numbers of, oh, you're going to increase productivity by 30%, it's creating these amount of hours of give back in people's days because of chat GPT plus or any of these AI strategies that people are deploying. How are you giving people confidence, and how are you looking at that it's real then as opposed to just these theoretical things people are throwing around?
Yeah, and I'll make this question even more generic, right, or broader, which is, there's a lot of LLM, and everyone wants to do it. It's the hype as well, and it's real too. It is real. It's gonna get even more real, right? But everyone feels the pressure right now to, like, I better have an LLM story, and
Yeah,
right. And people, I think some of the companies are trying to grasp with, like, what the right thing is. I think the key thing is the right use case. You
yeah,
got to have the right use case.
yeah.
I think the initial use cases we are seeing in the marketplace in general are the co-pilot, or I'll give you an example. I've got another client, and they serve kind of the medical community, medical facilities, and they have an LLM product which
Mm,
makes it easier for a clinician to take notes and do after a patient visit, to take notes, to do assessments and a treatment plan. All these activities which would take them, let's say, I don't know, 5 hours, now it takes them 20 minutes.
yeah,
And those savings translate into either, better life for them, better retention of these very critical people, or it translates to seeing more patients in a day,
yeah,
which eventually has impact on revenue.
yeah,
So I think it's got to be some of these very real ones
yeah,
where it should be a no-brainer, right?
yeah,
For people, like, yeah, it saves me 4 hours a day, and then they
yeah.
can do the math on what does that mean for their business.
Yeah, I agree. I
Um,
agree on that. That's a good call. I love the use case call. Well, let's go use case. Let's talk about a customer that we worked on together just recently and
mhm,
closed one of our largest transactions. And we don't have to talk about the customer name, but
mhm.
let's set that up. I think it'd be great for everybody to learn how you helped us build confidence in that CEO's investment in scale with from an
Right.
ROI perspective. You want to give us a
Right.
little bit on that from a high level?
Sure. So we, as you know, Jim, we I worked with you all, and there was some excellent work done on ScaleWith's value by Boston Consulting Group and other credible organizations. So we leveraged some of that, and then we came up with an ROI model, and then we validated that a little bit, right? Where so it's a perspective on how ScaleWith can impact, especially on the revenue side, and then profit too. And then we got data from the CEO of this company, right? I mean, he directed a couple of people. We got their kind of baseline data on their revenue, average size for a net new deal, average size for renewal, things like that. And based on that, we sort of created a customized ROI for them, and then we validated it with the CEO and his team. And there are a couple of tweaks that we made based on that input, but overall it was very well received.
Yeah.
And just high level, if we could share the findings, right?
Yeah.
I would say, and I'm very comfortable standing behind these because I did the math, and I always tend to be like, I'm not going to claim something that I don't feel comfortable with, right? So I think we saw ballpark about a 1.5 to 2.5% increase in revenue through some of the things that you mentioned before, Jim, right? So
Mhm.
you're essentially offering social impact contribution as an incentive to salespeople for net new or customer deals. So you could, improve your win rate on net new deals. You could use this incentive to push or nudge your prospects to larger deals or larger tiers, right? So average deal size goes up. And you could do the same thing on the customer side with either reducing attrition or protecting margin during renewals and things like that, right? So those are different ways to impact revenue. I would
Yeah.
say, and then there's a marketing angle, very focused marketing campaigns leading to more qualified pipeline.
Mhm.
So we saw about a 1.5 to 2.5% revenue, which they agreed with. They were willing to commit to that, right? And from a profit impact, it was a little bit higher number, 5 to 8%. Now obviously all this revenue impact also leads to profit impact, but there were a couple of other things. Like you guys, ScaleWith, provide a lot of social impact content, stories, polished videos, dashboards, metrics, whatnot, your AI matching, and all those things. So that's the cost avoidance for these companies. They don't
Yeah.
have to invest in that, right? And
Yeah.
that can add up quickly. And I think there's a halo effect in terms of hiring people, retaining people, because if you
Yeah.
work for a company that does all these good things, more social impact,
Yeah.
there's just that halo effect, right? So that was, I would say, 7 to 9x ROI, 700 to 900% ROI was our conclusion from that engagement. Now, every engagement is different, but those are pretty solid numbers, Jim. Like
Yeah.
I've done a bunch of these studies with many companies, and those are good, solid numbers.
Yeah. I want to call out. There's a comment that was in here, and
Mhm.
it's from Michael, and it's just a great comment. I hope that people are able to see from Michael Sachs. Just a great comment below on adding value to this discussion. There was another one about tech adoption. Oh
Mhm.
yeah, there it is. What are some tips for driving tech adoption?
Yeah.
Can I start out with this?
Sure.
I
Yeah.
am so passionate about this. As someone that's spent almost 30 years of a career in consulting and all in technology, I always go back to the concepts of design thinking. When you look at technology through the lens of personas, you said that before, and
Mhm.
feeling, knowing the empathetic map of a persona, looking
Mhm.
at the lens of solutions through that instead of just what we think the solution is, and getting everybody to lean into the use cases. So like getting the concept of diverging, getting a lot of feedback, and then converging, bringing it down to the owners that are going to carry out the mission of execution of the technology. I strongly believe understanding those users from a very deep persona based level.
Mhm.
Empathy maps are beautiful things to use to make sure that you have the holistic perspective of their pains and gains and what they want to get out of the solution, and then to really use the core of design thinking, which is really getting everybody to lean in, to feel ownership. But then at the end of the day, someone has to take the charge and
Mhm.
drive.
Leading. Right.
So that's one. The other thing is, I do believe that technology is all based on what is the consumable roadmap that an
Mhm.
organization can properly deploy, knowing their resources and constraints and orthodoxies that they might, that might exist inherently in an organization, but that ROI is the glue. It's the credibility factor of tech adoption. Because as people see spikes in, like you said, our customer at ScaleWith, increased revenue, increased profitability, operational efficiencies to execute a
Mhm.
selling cycle. I think, remember, they had about 400 contracts up for renewal. So making sure they land all those renewals in year at current spend or above. All those are important. And as people see it, adoption goes up. The
Mhm.
platform proves itself out from the ROI. It's a really important thing that people think ROI is just an afterthought. No, it gives everybody confidence that was the right thing to do. especially in this environment that we're in.
I'll add a couple more, Jim. I agree with what you said. I think one is kind of doing that business case. So if you're, let's say, on the buyer side, right, you're an enterprise buyer and you're asking this question about, okay, I'm going to invest in some technology. How do I make sure there's adoption, right?
Yeah.
I think it almost starts earlier when you're evaluating the technology. Don't wait for the solution provider to come up with a business case.
Yeah.
As the buyer, there needs to be a business case which links what you're trying to do to the business problems you're trying to solve and some business metrics. Because when you have that, then you have pretty senior people in the company behind this initiative. And when you
Yeah.
have a champion and a sponsor at a senior level, there's a higher chance of that initiative succeeding than not, right? So again, that helps. And just like anything else, like if you don't define where you want to go, you're not going to get there.
Right. Exactly.
You got to have these like 3, 5, no more than that,
Yeah.
key success criteria um, for the project. And and those have to be carefully chosen, right? So that it's going along the right way. So, those are a couple of other tips as well.
And whoever brought that question up, and we could go on, that could be a session in and of itself. But adoption is so strong that at ScaleWith, we created something called blueprinting. It's a simple exercise that we do some discovery with our customers. We take them through a workshopping environment, and we define the use cases that are important for them to solve for in a prioritized fashion. And we wrap it with your great work, which is here's the ROI that we hold ourselves accountable to it, which is key. A lot of times people just drop a plan or a business case on after the sale is closed, how that movie plays out.
And I think celebrating early success too. So I've been either part of or been around companies where you get some initial success with adoption with certain users. Go measure the impact that it drove, make a video, have them communicate all the good things that they achieve, right? So kind of this whole celebrating the early success while having the metrics in place. I think that's more of a people empathy angle, right? If I get Jim, I see a video from you saying like, hey, I use this solution and it worked me, and that's going to make me go up like, hey, I want to do that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I know that we want to always keep these. Any final thoughts? If there's other questions, I'll keep monitoring. But I love this stuff. We're going to do more of these. I thought we'd have this because it's such an important topic. We just did some great work together on some of the customers we've done, and just landed some important transactions and deals. We have another question. Here we go. I was going to wrap up with some final thoughts, but this is great. What are some common pitfalls or mistakes companies make when they roll out technologies?
I think we've covered some of this. Part of this is just not having a clear direction, right? So if the original evaluation was purely a technical evaluation and don't get me wrong, the technical evaluation is absolutely necessary, right? Without that, there's nothing. I'm not trying to downplay that. All I'm saying, like I've said before, right, it's necessary but not sufficient, right? So if it's a business evaluation as well, having clear business criteria, success metrics, executive sponsorship absolutely help. Having a strong ROI, having a champion who's vested into this. I'll say one more thing. I've often seen this. Like, let's say a company is evaluating software vendors. So that's like the sales cycle for the software vendor. Some set of people are involved, and typically the buyer gets the executives involved. But when it comes time to implementation and thereafter, a completely different set of people show up. Like it's the implementing on the customer side, on the buyer side.
Right.
There's no reference or no linkage to what was discussed in the sales cycle, what business goals, and I'm exaggerating a bit. I'm not saying none, but there's very little reference to that. So then no wonder these people are going to take the project in a direction that was maybe slightly different than what was the original intent. And that's also how sometimes things go off the rails.
Yeah. Can I give you a pitfall? I like that I really like that we're having this, because these are great when we just have questions that are coming in, because we're both passionate about this. I might take it in a different way. So I've seen the pitfalls of when an organization doesn't commit to a enterprise architecture strategy. So let me talk. So like they might go down a path of, I'm going to use ScaleWith because that's we're going to implement ScaleWith for my marketing, sales, and renewals. Okay, that's great. There's a journey of that. There's a crawl, walk, run, like we all know. But within that is technology, and how does it augment, integrate, obsolete some things possibly, and really drive and make the enterprise architecture strategy that much better going forward? Because that's the lifeblood. When in the underpinnings of an organization, there's all this technology that sits right in various functions. A lot of times it's disconnected. It's not providing value. There's like data proliferation. I could go on and on. But I think a major pitfall that I've seen in my career is when people don't have a good view of what their enterprise architecture strategy is today. What is it in 6 months? What's it going to be in 12 months? What are they driving to? So they buy technology and they drop it in with a parachute, and it sits nowhere. It's not adding value. It's not creating economies of scale. And now in this AI world, for ScaleWith, we always take that into consideration as part of our blueprint. And we look at that, Amit, part of that workshop. And we want to make sure that our AI, our data, and our technology integrates into the flow of work, but integrates into the architecture environments that our customers have already. We're not trying to displace anything. We're just trying to make sure that we're integrated into that environment.
This is happening a lot in our conversation, just triggering different thoughts, right? So I'll add one more thing, Jim. So, if someone in the audience, if you're evaluating different software vendors for like some certain type of software, I'm a strong believer that there's no single solution that has all the possible capabilities in the world, right? And if you ever go for an initiative where every solution capability checkbox is checked, first of all, that evaluation is going to take two years, and you're going to get a lot of lost value by not doing it earlier. And secondly, it's going to be an unsatisfactory outcome. So I think it's critical to identify the capabilities that are most important and especially tied to business success, and then get the users related to those capabilities excited. So in your example, Jim, right, if it's a ScaleWith implementation, that needs to be a subset of these super users, like an account executive and a marketing person. Let them play with it. Or let them get exposed to it. Let them ask the questions. And if they are convinced and excited, and if you have initially start with a narrow use case, perhaps on, using in customer renewals, right? Like then maybe get the CSMs involved, right? Like, so I think it's a matter of choosing the right set of capabilities and hence the users. Rather than just big bang, I want this system that satisfies every need of every person out there in the company. That just doesn't work.
I agree, Amit. Well, Amit, I think we're 40 minutes in, and I think we went over a little bit, but I absolutely love this discussion, and I think we probably need another one. We're gonna have to find time to do another one, but I really appreciate your time and insights and the work that we're doing together. And everybody, that's on this LinkedIn Live, you should go check out Growth Accelerators and the amazing organization that Amit has founded and launched, and doing some just world-class work. And I highly recommend them for your work. So please reach out to Amit. We're grateful for the work that we're doing.
Appreciate it. If I could just have a couple of parting thoughts. It's I've personally got a lot in value out of this. Always ask so what 3 times at least, right? When someone comes to you like, I've got this to sell to you, or whatever. It doesn't even have to be in a sales situation. Like, ask yourself, so what? Like, ultimately you want to end on something, a business metric or a business initiative, right? As opposed to just a feature functionality. I've just found that trick really work well for me throughout my career.
Yeah, no, that's great stuff, Amit. Well, thank you. And thank you everyone for the questions. I saw some threading going on with some insights shared. Thank you all that have done that. It makes these things so much better. So look for more of these coming in the near term. This is a common platform that we use at ScaleWith, and we'll have great people like Amit joining us in the near future. So everybody have a great day, and thank you so much for being part of this.
Jim, thanks for inviting me, and see you all, everyone. Take care.